speaking to Veronica Ebanks. So, talk to me about yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I know stuff, but I want you to talk to us and let people
Okay.
know what V is all about.
Okay. So I'm a Jamaican-born, I suppose British raised person. I came to the UK. I was sent to the UK when I was about two and a half,
Mm,
to be raised by a family member from Jamaica.
mm,
So I was born in Jamaica and came to the UK in '63.
mm.
Um, I was two and a half then, so I suppose that gives you an indication of my age.
Yes.
Um, I was born to a teenage mum. I was sent to her aunt here in Britain to be raised. Um, but there was no arrangement to reconcile me back to my mother.
Mm,
So I was actually raised as the child of this person, this
mm,
aunt. Um, I can say it wasn't a very good upbringing. I have
mm,
childhood adverse experiences.
mhm,
It wasn't let's just say it wasn't a nurturing or a favorable childhood. But
mhm,
here I am today. In some of my darkest moments, I lost myself in books because I was an early reader. I read quite early. I was quite,
mm,
I suppose, gifted in that way that I could read quite
mhm,
well.
mm.
And then I left, or I was put out at 18. And then I found out that the woman who I'd called mom for 18 years wasn't my mother,
Oh.
but she was my mother, my birth mother's auntie. Um, I went to college. I gained qualifications. I always had a knack for studying. I love studying,
Mm,
and was baptized in the church when I was 14. I was 14 years of age. I was baptized in the church. Um, I got married, met someone while I was still in school. I met someone. We got married, and as you know, young people, you're not, and church young people, you're not supposed to really be dating and seeing people. You're not supposed to
mm,
be sneaking
mm.
around and having relationships. But but I did. I know that look. I know that look, Lady V. I know.
I
I know.
tell you, it's not a look of judgment at all, to be honest. It's just culturally, at least in my background anyway,
Yeah.
they do say that. And sometimes that could be a hindrance. I think that if young people are allowed to relate to others, whether it's in a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, but with guidance, but what we do is we make them afraid to do it, so they go and do it underground anyway.
Right, but that just wasn't that was boy having a boyfriend was not back then was not on the agenda
Yes,
in
fully
anybody's book
understood. Yeah.
in anybody's book
Yes, yeah.
for a 15-year-old. But anyway,
Mm.
long story short, we got married anyway, and with four children, and we are still married today.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Um,
good
yeah,
news. Yeah.
we're still together, even though there are
Mm.
days he could take a Dutch pot to me and I could take one to him.
Of
But
course.
that's married life.
Of
But
course.
I went on to go back to college as a mature student. I felt there was more to me than, I suppose, some of the work, the part-time work I was doing in the evenings just to kind of get some income, the care work and
Yes.
so
Oh,
on. I
yes.
thought, but
Mm.
hang on a minute, I've got qualifications from school and college. So let me see what I can do. So I went to university as a mature student
Mm.
and did my degree in biological sciences with a biotech um, project. My final project, the final year
Mm.
project, was a biotech project. But I went through the access course, which a lot of people do for mature students, and then went on to the HND,
Mm-hmm.
and then transferred from the HND into the final year of a BSc honors
Mm-hmm.
science course, and then decided I would get work in this kind of scientific fields. So I've worked in labs. I've worked in food testing. I've worked in pathology lab. I've worked in I did a little stint in public health. That was like a work experience. I did some
Mm.
public health work. And then in the course of that, someone asked me to come on board with some teaching in a community project. So I ended up teaching literacy, numeracy, and some other, gosh, what do they call them? Where you, it's all practical based, and you get assessed on what you do. Those
Mm.
kind of MVQs, MVQs.
LVQs, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I did some MVQ teaching, and then I did
Hmm.
some college lecturing. I lectured science across several courses in a local college where I was living. But I was always a visiting lecturer. I was never made a full lecturer. So I was always like,
Mm.
I'm on the books and I'm there every year to kind of deliver across however many courses, but there was never a permanent post. And they'd say, "Oh, next year," but next year never came. So I decided at some point, I'm out. I'm gonna, you know,
Yeah.
find alternative work, and I did. And I worked in a college. Sorry, I worked in the youth service initially, supporting young people. There used to be a service called Connections,
Yes, I remember that.
yeah, where
Mm.
young people had a PA, a personal advisor, to
Yeah.
support them with their issues and their progression and so on from school to
Did they
college and
used
beyond.
to? Yeah. Did they used to get some money for connections? I think I remember them.
Connections was a government initiative,
Yeah.
the government, and it was nationwide.
Yes, I remember that. Mm.
Yeah, so I worked for them for a while,
Mm.
supporting young people with personal issues, not necessarily the career stuff, but
Mm.
the issues. I suppose they probably felt by virtue of age and my experience that I would
Of
be
course.
good supporting young people with personal stuff as opposed to, well, so you want to be a nurse, but you know, people die and there's blood and stuff. Instead of doing that side, but that's the reality checking you have to do
Yes.
sometimes
Yes.
with young people.
Mm.
Um, and I did that for a good few years until the service was shut down.
Mm.
It was kind of gone, and I went into a local college to become a personal advisor, almost like a pastoral support
Mm.
person in the college. And I did that for a few years. Then they started all these rounds of restructuring. Then the job was, the job you're doing all the same things, and even with more duties, but the titles changed.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I did one round of restructure, took a big pay hit, but I loved the work, so I stayed. And then
Mm.
when it all happened again, I like maybe 2 years later, I thought, here we go again. I thought, no, I can't do this again. I'm out. I've got enough skills and expertise to be able to work for myself and to,
Mhm.
have skills and knowledge that people pay for. And
Yes.
safeguarding was a big thing for me at that time because my last role was safeguarding advisor. So I decided to set up my own independent safeguarding training.
Mhm.
So I became a safeguarding children's trainer, an independent, and would get booked. I started to get booking because people kind of knew me. They kind of knew me in the county, and I started to get work, and that work kind of filtered out, and I ended
Mhm.
up going to places like Shrewsbury and Fareham, which isn't right down south near Portsmouth. I
Mhm.
went to Hampshire, so I'd go into foster care groups. I'd go into PRUs. I did a little stint in a PRU as the safeguarding practitioner there. So I was the person responsible for safeguarding, the named person for safeguarding. Um, where else? What else have I done? And then alongside all of this, I'm studying. So I'm still taking qualifications. I train as a masseur. So I'm a qualified masseur. So I do
Okay.
aromatherapy massage. I do Swedish massage. I do something called myofascial release, which is
Which
a body technique for pain relief and so on. But I don't do much of that now because the bulk of my income, because obviously, time's hard. You have to kind of go where work
where
where
the
you get
money
the
is.
most
Yep.
money, right?
Mhm.
So the training has been the bulk of my where I got most of my income. But at the same time, I started a small business because I had a skin problem, a problem on my scalp,
Right.
and I began to blend oils and look at how certain blends could work for skin,
Mm.
could work for scalp. And I started to share that with friends and family, and they said, "Oh, why don't you market this? Why don't you sell it?" So I decided, well, I kind of ummed and ahed, and then decided, okay, but I'm only going to make this. I'm not going to make branch out and do lots of other things, because I want to continue. I want to keep my hands in the training. I want to just, yeah, I don't want to be too. In fact, because I'm an artisan producer, basically that means I make it from home,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
have to. It has to be manageable. I don't have masses of storage space. I
Yes.
don't have a massive
Yeah.
house. I don't have a workshop, which I wanted to. I planned at some point, oh, I'm going to build a workshop in the bottom of the garden, but
Mm.
that didn't happen. It just didn't happen. But can I just say though, in terms of cosmetic manufacturing and producing, you
Hmm.
must get your products assessed and get your safety certificate.
Oh, right. So those are the prerequisites here in the UK.
Yeah, yeah. You need
Okay.
to have assessments done on your products, and
And that's a
so that you
whole.
can be a legal, yeah, so that you
Yeah.
can be a legal seller.
Right. I see.
Yeah, registered
Okay.
and legal.
Ah.
Yeah,
And
because
so
if anything goes wrong,
I
uh,
know people will come back to you. You could get sued.
hello, and because I look like the way I look and the way like us, yeah, I'm front page news.
Yeah.
She
The,
made the people's skin fall off.
the charlatan doctor created some
Oh
stuff.
dear. Oh, so and labeling. So you follow all the standards. You follow all the
Yes. Okay. All
and
right.
register.
Mm,
So
mm.
so that's that. So that's my small
That's your small.
micro business.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
micro business.
Yes. Well, I wanted to. I know there's a bit more to talk about because there's your book. You have two books, I think, to your name. The first one being
I've got the
Life in a Lockdown.
hysterectomy. Oh yes, yeah, but
Life
that's
in a
not my
Lockdown.
name. But just
I
to
know
be,
it's. I know
yeah,
you're a co-author on that
I'm a
book.
co-author on that one. Lovely
Yes.
D Bailey.
Dee Bailey, absolutely.
Yeah,
I
lovely
did.
D
I
Bailey's
think I
helped me
spoke
with
to her. I think I interviewed her, and I also interviewed Nikki as well, who are also
that.
co-authors
Co-authors. Yeah.
to that book. But they said it was your idea.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, we were meeting regularly. We were meeting once
Mm,
a week during
mm,
lockdown.
mm,
Now, how many of us had been in lockdown? Had we ever been down this road before in life?
never.
And it was a case of we were women, mainly women,
Mm,
supporting each other online each week. Are you okay? We tell each other, how our week went and our ups, our highs and lows. And I thought to myself, this is absolutely fascinating. We need to document this, or at least part of this, for history, for
mm,
posterity, for as a
mm,
resource that
mm.
maybe in years to come, maybe I don't know, another generation might pick it up and find out about lockdown from a group of diverse women.
Absolutely, and you could actually, I don't know if people do it today, but when I was growing up, people used to have capsules that they would bury.
Ah, yes,
They put like a little box of different things in a box and
yes,
bury it in the hopes that somewhere down the line in the future, so somebody would find that and dig it up,
that's right. Yes,
and yeah, that it could go in one
yeah.
of them. Mm,
Yeah. So
hmm,
that was it. So 22 of us came together. So I posed
mm,
the idea to Dee, and she
mm,
said she'll pose the idea to the ladies.
hmm.
And within a couple of months, bish bosh, our book was there.
Yes, I was so excited when Nikki said
Yeah.
it, that she's written a book. I said, what? When did
Yes.
that happen?
Yes. Yeah. And it just goes to show that sometimes things will come your way,
Mm,
and a change in your life and circumstances depends on that yes or
hmm.
no.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to talk a little bit about uh, the Hysterectomy Chronicles, because that's the other book,
Yeah.
and I'm not, and both books are equally as important in my mind. The Hysterectomy Chronicles, however, is something that a lot of women need to pick up and read. Tell us why.
Wow. Um, Years ago, I started on a gynae issues journey.
Mm,
Now, in my eyes, I would look at my seniors, and see some of our senior mothers, then we call them mothers, our seniors, with big extended stomachs
Mm.
and swollen feet. And I just thought that was normal. As you got older, your stomach would swell up and your feet would swell up, right? Unbeknownst to me, my stomach is now swelling. My feet are now, especially in the summer, are swelling ridiculously, right? My toes are beginning to look like small sausages in my sandals, and I felt embarrassed and having to run to the loo every 5 minutes.
Mm.
And it transpired that I had fibroids growing
Mhm.
in my womb. Fibroids, for those listening, are not sure. Fibroids are non cancerous growths. Another term you might see is leiomyoma.
Mhm.
And so unbeknownst to me, I had these fibroids growing within my womb, and my stomach was getting bigger and
Mhm.
bigger. And
Mhm.
my monthly menses or my periods were getting heavier and heavier. My stomach would be so distended and hot. I don't know how I got through those years. I really don't. And this is
Mm.
before I've even gone to the doctor,
Mm.
right? And on a particular day at work, something happened, and I thought, this can't be normal. I need to take myself to the doctor and tell the
Mm.
doctor, right? Because I'm thinking to myself, I'm thinking, well, our mothers are going through this, or this must be normal, where you're wearing, X amount of pads and internal protection as well.
Mm.
Anyway, I went to the doctor, and there began my journey. But I like
Mm.
to write because it helps me process things.
Mm.
So I kept a journal, and I
Mhm.
wrote down my journey, what was going on when I had to go for tests, what they were doing, and so on, and how I
Mhm.
was feeling.
Mhm.
And so that was that was over 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Anyway, so the journal, just jumping forward, because I don't want to give away too much.
Yes, of
You
course.
need to read.
Mm.
Everyone, you need to read, right?
Mm.
I found my journal in early 2022, and I thumbed through. I was kind of surprised. Oh, here's my journal, and I flicked through it. And I was flicking through it. I thought, oh, I wonder if this could help anybody.
Mm.
And I decided to self-publish it. But a little voice in the back of my head was saying, "But V, that's very personal, man. You can't really share some of that." And I thought to myself, well, nobody can beat me. No, I can share what I want.
Absolutely.
I can
Mm.
share what I want to share. So I self-published, and I kind of done it on a sneak. I kind of did it quietly under the
Mm.
radar. I did it myself through
Mm.
Kindle Direct Publishing,
Mhm.
and put it out there because I still wanted to maintain some kind of privacy in a sense.
Anonymity, so to speak. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yes.
didn't want
Mm.
to kind of be too out there.
Mm.
And decided I wasn't, well, to be honest, I was like, too much, do I do a book launch or not? And friends encouraged me, especially Dee was
Mm.
a light in this time, and she
Mhm.
said, yeah, you must have a book launch. But so in my head I thought, okay, I don't want to just be sitting there reading little snippets and signing and smiling. I thought, let me
Mhm.
bring in some experts, some people who are knowledgeable. So I had
Yeah.
like a panel for the book launch. We had like a little panel, and
Mm.
that was lovely, and people were able to talk. And for the first, some people were saying that for the first time we've never ever been able to discuss some of this stuff openly.
Mm.
So
Mm.
what next? Where do we go now? We've started this dialogue. What next?
Mhm.
And that was the question for me. Okay, so we need to get people talking. We need to have a safe space. We need to get people talking. We need experts because we need credible information. We don't want no so and so's cousin's brother, sister, auntie said,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I agree. Mhm.
We want credible sources
Information.
for
Yeah.
information, right?
Mhm.
Valid information.
Mhm.
So that was when the idea of a conference was birthed in me. I said, right, let's have a conference. Let's bring the experts in,
Mhm.
create a space, safe space for individuals to come, and not only individuals who may be suffering, but people who just want to find out more. Right? It could be HR people. It could be
Mhm.
husbands, boyfriends.
Mhm.
It could be anybody, to be honest, who needs to know or who needs information to be able to make a decision. Well, do I let them cut out my fibroids, or do I take the whole uterus out? What do I have a hysterectomy, or do I have something called a myomectomy, where they go in and they try and cut them out, or do I have another
Yeah.
procedure?
Yeah. I
right?
had a myomectomy, an open myomectomy many years
Right,
ago. Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. So these are some of the decisions that some women will have to make, and sometimes
Mm,
they give you the options, and then you are left. But the majority of the time, then you are left to decide what you want to do. And
hmm.
sometimes it's hard to know what you want to do because you don't really know. Just like, okay, I'll throw this in. Might sound a bit erroneous, but Brexit, in or out.
Yeah.
We all had the letter through our door from Boris about
Hmm.
Brexit. But what were we voting for? Did we know the implications of what
No.
each outcome would be?
Mm,
Right. So sometimes when we're at a point of decision, because we're not fully informed, we can make decisions that may not be beneficial. They're beneficial to us.
absolutely.
Okay. So
Absolutely. So, I've got to ask, and hopefully this isn't delving too deep into the book. When you decided to go to the doctor, considering what we see and what we hear about um, women of color and healthcare,
mm,
did you find support? Was it a supportive experience for you?
right. Well, I can say at the time, my doctor was very good.
Mm,
There's only one thing that I wished I wish he'd done things in reverse. I wish he'd sent me for a scan first because it's
mm,
almost like a textbook. It's almost like a checklist. So if
mm-hmm,
the patient presents with this, you do
mm-hmm,
this. You do this first, then you
mm-hmm,
do that next, and so on. And I felt that I was on that list. My first intervention, or the first medical intervention I had, was a Mirena coil
mm,
for the bleeding.
mm,
Right, unbeknownst to the doctor, what emerged later was that my uterus was full of fibroids, and some of them were protruding into the space, so to speak,
mm-hmm,
inside. And so the Mirena coil was rejected within a week. But
mm-hmm,
within a week, I felt for those string or those metal wire things, and there was nothing there. It had been expelled.
mm,
Yeah. But in terms of the care overall, my doctor, I think, was very good. He was following, I suppose, a process, but he did refer me to the hospital quite soon. I think the pressures on the NHS then were maybe not as acute
as they are.
as they are
Mm,
now. So I got
mm-hmm,
my referral to the hospital quite quickly for
mm-hmm,
investigation. And I felt at each step of the way, the only thing I wished I'd had more of is more information. I remember being given leaflets.
mm-hmm,
The nurse is there, especially when she's doing your checkups. You know, she's weighing you. But you don't feel as if you have enough time to sit and ask everything you'd like to, because your appointment's at such and such a time, and she I suppose maybe unbeknownst to you, she's got 10 minutes with you,
mm-hmm.
right? Whereas you'd like to maybe sit down, have a little, glass of water, or a cup of tea, and discuss, have a talk. Well, that's how I would like to see things go. Maybe they're doing it now. I don't know. But when I was,
Yeah, I remember when because I suffered with fibroids, and there it was presenting itself in so many different symptoms.
yeah,
And to be honest, my GP was not supportive at all. I had to walk. I walked. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know that it was fibroids. I just knew that certain
right,
things were happening.
were happening.
And one day I just walked in off the street into
Mm.
a what do they call those places? To
Walk in, a walk in.
yeah, it wasn't even a walk-in clinic. I just
Mm.
walked into it. In actual fact,
Right.
a gynecology, community
Ah,
gynecology.
right. Yeah.
I just walked in and said,
Yes.
"Listen, I need help, and my
Hmm.
doctor can't help me." And they were so kind.
Ah,
And the chap, incidentally, the senior gynecologist on that day was an elderly man, and did an internal examination and said, "Go back to your doctor and tell them to refer you to gynecology." And that was
wow.
how they found out about the fibroids, and
Yeah.
then open myomectomy and all that sort of
And
stuff.
sort of. How
Yeah,
sad
yeah,
is that, though? How
yeah.
sad is that? And
Mm,
sometimes, because of the racial disparities,
Mm.
people that look like us suffer more.
Yes.
And by the
Yeah.
time we get to the gynecology, get to that referral, things are acute. Things are at a serious stage where bigger decisions and more drastic intervention is needed.
And it's very scary when you don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
and nobody wants to tell, nobody has the time to sit with you, as you
Mm,
say, and just talk
yeah.
you
And
through
talk.
things. Mm.
Yeah, and explain things. And the
Mm.
sad thing is, Lady B, that many of us have grown up, not all, but I can only speak for myself then, that our
Mm.
seniors didn't really discuss certain things with us. We probably had the period talk, which for me amounted to keep away from boys, don't bring in any belly.
That's exactly what I was told.
All right. Um they they didn't share
Mm.
any insights into some of the issues that you
Mm.
could, I suppose, experience as a woman.
Mm. Mm.
They didn't talk about themselves. Some of our seniors went in and had hysterectomies and had surgery, but never told anybody
Well,
what
we
was
didn't
going
know that.
on.
Yeah,
Exactly,
we didn't know
exactly.
that.
Exactly. But years
Um,
later, it comes out when they felt comfortable, maybe to mention it, or to say, or to share with they felt safe to share that information with someone. Um,
mm.
and even some of this, and you know what? I believe that some of the men, some of the husbands, didn't even know either that their wife was
That
going
their
into
wives
that.
had hysterectomies. Ooh,
They're going
but they
in. They're
just knew they
going
were
in. The
going in for
doctor.
an operation.
They're going in for operation. Yeah, my stomach is bad, and they said they're gonna have to cut me.
Whoa.
All right, cut me. And the men don't know anatomy and physiology. They know, oh yes, they have to cut and take something out,
It's
right? And
amazing.
that's it.
Yeah, it's amazing because even when I went in for this operation myself, it was an open myomectomy. It was not a hysterectomy. They just wanted to take out there were many fibroids in there,
Right,
and they
right.
wanted to get them out. But before, as I was lying on the table and they were giving me the anesthetic,
Mm,
the consultant said to me, "So if you start to bleed profusely, should we just take out your womb?" I said, "No, you
right.
sew me right back up."
That's on the paper, but that's on the disclaimer forms that you sign
Yeah,
about the
yeah,
bleeding and the loss of life. Remember, you have to sign some forms, some
yeah,
documents,
yeah.
right?
I
And
said,
that in
"No,
itself, that in itself.
how can you do that? I'm on the table, mate.
Oh,
Getting ready to go into
oh, I
operation,
know.
and you're saying, should you take?" I said, "No, I came in with a womb, and I'm leaving with one. Whatever happens, you know."
Yeah.
So my question being, that I'm leading into a question here because in my mind, I, you know, this might sound controversial, but as a woman,
Yeah, go on.
right, I
Mhm.
always felt like, and that my womb is part of what makes me a woman, and I wasn't
Yeah,
going to let anybody take that
let it go.
away from me. How did when the option of a hysterectomy was presented to you? What was your thinking? How did that affect you?
Okay. Now, by then, I'd had four children.
Mm,
I'd had four sons,
mm,
and wasn't planning on having any more. In fact, I'd
mm,
had my tubes clipped. I'd had
mm,
basically I've sterilized, so in
you
inverted
had them
commas.
that you had your
Yeah,
tubes tied.
I
Yeah.
had two small clips on my fallopian tubes,
Mm,
meaning that I shouldn't get pregnant. Right?
mm, mm,
Um, how did I feel? So in my mind, the suffering that I endured over all those years, and I outlined some of the stuff in the book.
mhm,
So you're going out or you're going into work, you've got to take extra change of clothes, you've got to make sure you got all this stuff, and you're going on holiday, and oh dear, it's going to fall during whatever. You're worried about you're just constantly on edge because you're
mm,
just not comfortable. Have I got enough tablets? Because dear, I took so many pills over the years. It was just
mm,
ridiculous. To the
mm.
state, I got to the state where I had to buy a machine, a pain relieving machine,
Oh yeah, an
because
UV.
I
When
bought.
is that?
Well, it was called TENS. The machine
Mm,
I bought was called a TENS machine.
mm,
basically it sends electrical signals into the area, and just basically, succinctly, it just confuses the pain signals going to the brain.
Yeah, my daughter
Yeah,
uses one of those. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it
Mm,
confuses
mm,
the signaling,
mm,
basically
mm,
disrupts the signaling. So
mm-hmm.
what you feel is the pain signals distorted, and you don't feel what you
As
should
pain. Yeah,
as
yeah.
pain, but
Mm,
you still feel something. But what the machine
yes.
does, depending on the settings, it
Mm,
takes the edge off it.
mm,
For me, it never took it completely away,
away. Mm.
but it just dulled it down. So I was able to function, because prior to that, if I hadn't taken tablets, I'd be rolling around in bed, vomiting
Oh,
with
goodness
the
me.
pain, and not being able to, and not even be coherent, not even be
Mm,
able to kind of speak and hold a conversation. But
mm,
in terms of the healthcare, coming back to how some of us are treated when we present with
mm.
our issues, I just think there's more training that is needed, and more data, and more of us talking to each other,
Oh,
so that
yes.
so you see, your experience combined with my experience,
Mm-hmm,
combined with someone else's, now we're beginning to see patterns, or we're beginning
mm-hmm,
to see where there's more training needed, or we're beginning to see where the racism really is,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right?
Uh, yes, indeed, and hopefully it's with the help of people such as yourself, who's documenting this stuff and throwing and organizing these seminars.
Yeah.
Will bring people to the table to talk more. I was recently added to a menopause group because
Yay.
many of us don't talk about these
Oh
things.
no.
Um, Incidentally, I've been through the menopause. I know that they say it never goes away, but I'm one of the luckier ones, if you like, because it hasn't really affected me in any real adverse way. I mean,
That's
there's the
good.
depression and things like that, but I've kind of
Yeah.
learned to manage all of that in my own
Yes.
way. So, but
Yeah.
no, but a lot of women and I see and hear a lot of women today, younger women who are younger than myself, and then I realized that, oh my God, that's what was happening to me at that time, because I didn't know
Right.
and I wasn't talking to anybody,
Right.
you know.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, and incidentally, when I did talk to a doctor, it was usually a male doctor who would
Hmm.
say, yeah, yeah, you're all right, you know.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow.
so basically, by the time they presented you with the option of hysterectomy,
Yes, I had a choice.
what was the other choice?
I had a choice of embolization.
What's
Yes,
that?
embolization is where they go in through your groin into a major blood. I'm just going to keep the language very simple. Into a major
Hmm.
blood vessel, and they inject something into the fibroids, into the blood vessels that supply the fibroids,
Hmm.
to help shrink them.
Hmm.
So you don't have an abdominal cut.
Mm.
It's I suppose, I
It's
don't know whether
keyhole
you,
in a way.
but they don't go through your abdomen. I think what I was offered was where they go in through the groin into a large blood vessel, and literally pass something all the way up into the blood vessels that supplies the uterus, and inject something in there. I think back then, I don't know if it's the same thing, but in shall I say it? In my interpretation, it was almost like a fine plastic, powdered plastic. But that's a very oversimplification,
Mm.
right? But it's like a very fine powdered plastic, and that's injected in, and that actually reduces the blood supply, and hence starves the fibroids of oxygen, and what it would need to keep growing. Once you cut
But
off
how
the blood
many
supply.
fibroids would they? They'd have to do so many
No. It's a one. They inject this stuff into the
into the
uterus.
uterus. Okay,
The
right.
main supplying
Hmm.
the uterus, and the, I suppose, hence the fibroids, and then
Mm.
the fibroids would die off because there'd be nothing feeding them.
Mm.
Then it's
Mm.
like if you have a plant and it was on a continuous water, had water just flowing past it all the time. You block
Yes.
off that water eventually that plant would just dry
It's
up
going to die off.
and
Yes.
die, right?
Hmm.
So that was the option, or have a hysterectomy where they were going to take out the uterus, just
Uh,
take out the uterus and the cervix, the uterus, but leave. They said they're going to leave the ovaries in place. In my case,
okay.
maybe
And
because of age.
because of your age, and
I'm not sure.
how has that impacted on you then?
Do you know something?
Mm,
Once I'd healed, now I have a in my book. I document what happened to me. My journey wasn't straightforward,
mm.
right? It wasn't straightforward. And I'd say from start to finish, in terms of the interventions, I'd say I was 2 years up the road when I started to feel me again, feel like
Two
myself.
years.
Yeah, yeah. When I said goodbye, I had I had the open abdominal hysterectomy.
Mm,
Um, not a radical hysterectomy where they take everything out. I had my ovaries left in place. I think my tubes were left in place because yeah, there's something in the book that I talk about.
mm.
Um, but I just feel when I had the operation, I felt a sense of peace. I was able to say goodbye to my uterus. I did say to them I'd like to see it when they took it out. I said I'd like to see it. They said they couldn't. I couldn't see it physically, but they could take some pictures for me, and they did. I remember coming round, and there was a brown envelope. Maybe the following day on my bedside table, and when
Mm,
my husband came and we opened it, there's some little pictures there,
mm,
and yeah, that was my uterus, and I was able to look at it and say thank you. You gave me my children, but you were diseased, um, and it's quite a
was
momentous
it
time.
emotional for you?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, it was because something that didn't look, and it was, and you could see because they'd done. I could see the whole thing, and I could see where they cut it in half and opened it up, and you could see all the fibroids in it. The ones you could see, because sometimes the fibroids are very small, and sometimes
mm,
it's these that are missed that people turn around and say, well, they've grown back. But sometimes little small ones, this is a surgeon that shared that sometimes very small ones can be missed.
and
And so,
sometimes those small ones are embedded in the lining or something, aren't they?
yeah, hard to get at,
They're
but
hard to get at. Yeah, yeah.
or hard to see.
To see. Yeah.
And then eventually these are the ones that will grow again. So people, it's not
Mm,
the same fibroid that's been taken out. They're different ones, but sometimes little tiny ones are there, and then
mm,
they, after surgery, sadly, they will then continue to grow and get
mm,
bigger. But yeah,
mm,
it is an emotional time for women, and I understand where some women would say, yeah, like you said earlier, I
mm.
was born with a uterus or born with a womb, and I'd like to keep it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And some women, I've met a lady who her stomach was so distended. She was a very petite lady, but her stomach, she looked like a 9 month pregnancy. She looked
Whoa.
like a 9 month pregnancy, but she was holding out. She was holding out. She said she would rather wait until the estrogen levels started to go
To
down,
recede, yes. Yeah.
because it's
Mm,
the estrogen hormone
mm.
that helps,
That feeds the
that
fibroid.
fuels, yeah,
Yeah.
that fuels the fibroids. And
Mm,
she was adamant that she was going to wait it out. She didn't want any surgery. But I was so worried for her. And I think on that particular day, I think she did get to speak to two of the surgeons that were there,
mm, mm,
which then I had to kind of just take, just leave her and then take myself away because I do worry and I am empathetic. So there's a certain place where I can support. I do my bit, I
mhm,
support, but and then I step away. Maybe it's because of years of supporting people with issues and serious issues,
mm.
you know, that you learn to almost you get the person to the place of safety, to the place of help, and then you step back.
Well, absolutely, because it's
Right?
a very personal decision to make, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you can't make that decision for them. They have to make that decision themselves.
Themselves. Yeah.
And so they don't turn around and blame you down the line. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Um,
But this is the good thing about having these events, you see,
mhm,
that people have that opportunity to ask the question or hear something and
mhm.
think, oh, I didn't know that. That's something for me to think about.
Yeah, so I know that I note that you had a this Virelba. So I can see you've got Virelba
Yeah.
mind and body. So let's talk about the seminar that you had on the 29th of September.
Right. Okay. So just for clarity, Varalba Mind and Body
Hmm.
is my trading name. I trade under
Yes.
that name. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
The hysterectomy, what we need to know
Hmm.
webinar took
Hmm.
place on the 29th.
Hmm.
And again, it was, I suppose, designed for the people who couldn't make the in person
Hmm.
people, because not everybody can come out and join other people. There's some
Hmm.
people, and ironically, there are individuals because of their gynae stuff can't come out
Yes.
because of the bladder weakness, or so
It's
that they're at
debilitating.
home.
Mm,
Right,
mm,
right. So having something online actually reaches and meets the needs of some of those individuals. Yeah.
yeah. Is this something you're going to be doing again?
Definitely. This is our second year. 20 I'm
Oh,
planning now for
really?
2020. Yeah, this is my second year. I'm planning for
Oh.
2025 now as there's stuff I've got to do. I've got to get
Mm,
sort out for 2025. And can I just
mm,
add, it's not a profit making
mm,
initiative, because
mm,
I am looking now to formalize what I've been doing
mm,
under an entity. So I am looking into the
mm,
different structures, then let's say
mm,
structures,
mm,
and going to decide for 2025 which of those structures Fab UK will
mm.
become. So
Yes,
yeah,
so when you decided to organize this fibroids and hysterectomy and beyond, which is
hmm,
what the webinar was called,
yeah.
um, why did you decide to do it? Because obviously this was your second one. I hadn't heard about it until this year, to be honest.
Wow. Well, last
Mm,
year it was
mm,
there was scheduled posts on every platform,
mm,
Facebook, Twitter. I think
mm,
before it was X, I don't know, but on Twitter,
mm,
X, Instagram, there were posts on all the different platforms. The only one I'm
mm,
not on, I can tell you which platform I haven't been on, and that's TikTok.
mm.
That may change for 2025, but
Yes, it's TikTok is quite good.
yeah,
When it comes to widening your reach.
yeah.
I believe anyway. Um,
So we
so yeah,
decided
so
putting
what
on.
was it that fueled the thought process of doing this? Why did you
Right, what we
decide?
need to know. Okay, so
Mm,
fibroids, hysterectomy, and beyond. So the first conference was born out of from the book launch. People were saying, "Well, where do we go now?" And the feedback, and they enjoyed the sharing aspect of it and
mhm,
the intimacy of it, and so on. Where did we go from there? So the next logical step was, okay, let's have a conference. Let's start the converse. The phrase I kept on using was lifting the lid,
mm,
no more taboo. Because we
mhm,
just keep these things, we whisper it amongst ourselves, maybe. Some women are on their own. They haven't told their friends, they haven't told their parents, they haven't told whoever in their lives that they're facing these massive decisions. And some of
mm.
these decisions are life changing.
They
Think about
are.
the woman who doesn't have any children,
Mm,
who, because of her condition, the surgeons or the medics are saying, well, we'd advise you to have a hysterectomy. Or and it's a big crossroads. Well, do I go ahead with it? Well, I still want children. They've said they can't do any more myomectomy because of scar tissue or whatever. So putting on the conference, my thought processes was this: I put myself back to where I was over 10 years ago when I had to make a decision, and it was a very, very lonely journey.
mm,
Even though I was married, it was a lonely journey because there was only certain things, I suppose, certain individuals that would understand that I wanted to speak to. I wanted to speak to the medical. I wanted to speak to the medical people, but you don't really get access to them,
mm,
right? And unless you go and do lots of research, on internet, which I did do. I did my research, but I wanted to sit and talk to somebody. I wanted that kind of face to face contact, which wasn't going to happen. Other than when you go in and the nurse has to weigh you, take your height, and then you can ask various questions. You know, you do your urine sample and all of that.
Mm.
And then I wanted quality. I wanted people to have at least some kind of access,
Mm.
right? That was part of it. A safe space, access. Access to what? Access to the experts, the people who know. And for those who have issues around maybe trust issues, well,
Mm.
he's going to say anything because he's not one of us or she's not one of us. I wanted to bring in because 84% in an American study has highlighted that 84% of black women, women that look like you and me, right? Black women who classify themselves as black. I know some people use the term people of color. Some people don't like that
Mm.
color. African diaspora. Some people like
Mm.
that. Some people don't like that terminology.
Mm.
But however you describe yourself, if you're melanated, yes, to a degree, or even not,
Absolutely.
or even not, or even not. But if you classify yourself as black or identify yourself as black, 84%, one American study highlighted that black women over the course of their lifetime are 84% more likely to develop fibroids,
Mm.
right? So if it's affecting us to that degree, I think when I first started, when I published a book and started the interventions or the activities, there were figures like 70% or 75%, and then it went up, and then it went up again. So my question is, what is going on? We need to get people that look like us who we can trust then, yeah? Who we feel we can trust, who we feel are credible. So what did I do? I put out a call for black surgeons. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen one black surgeon, or I'd heard one black surgeon speak on an online event. And her
Mm.
name is Dr. Loretta Oduware Ogbara Okor.
Mm.
And I listened to her and I thought, I'd love that lady to come and speak to
Mm.
individuals who want to know more around fibroids and hysterectomy and what happens afterwards and the beyond part. And I reached out to her and I was absolutely blown away because I was a bit nervous. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've never really directly approached a surgeon, a gynae surgeon before, obstetrics gynecology surgeon,
Mm.
to ask, to literally ask a favor. Would she,
Mm.
because there's no money in it. It's not like I'm a big organization and can pay
Mm.
people,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And she was so, so loving and she was such a heart. Gosh, I don't know how to describe her. She's just an amazing human being, right? And we had a conversation, very approachable lady. And from the time I heard her speak, I was enthralled, and by
Mm.
her expertise, her
Mm.
the way she delivered, and her down to earth, earthy approach, and
Mm.
no nonsense, to the point, to the
Yes.
nail on the head. No
Yes.
skirting around issues and
Yeah.
so on, but just being real. I thought, and she had her own personal experience. I thought, yeah, and she agreed. She said yes, she'd come to the conference and speak. Now, I don't, and then she said she knows another surgeon a male surgeon, who would come on board as well. So there's Dr. Eki
Mm.
Imovon. His name is Dr. Eki Imovon. Lovely man, absolutely lovely. I met him at a lovely awards event, and his lovely wife.
Mm.
And Dr. Eki agreed to come as well. So, and they're from up north. They don't even live. I live in the Midlands.
Wow.
I live in the Midlands,
Do
and they
you live in the
actually,
Midlands? Whereabouts in the
yeah,
Midlands do you
I'm in
live?
Milton Keynes.
Ah,
I'm in Milton
right.
Keynes, about half an
Okay.
about half by train, about half an hour by train from Birmingham that way, and
Yeah.
about 40 minutes by train to London that way.
To London. Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah.
Indeed.
And so we had this lovely, lovely group of people, and then that's another story which I'll talk about maybe another time.
Another time, because I am going to invite you back. There's lots to talk
Okay,
about. Yes.
I got over
Mm.
my fear of going to networking events.
Mm.
But that's another story in itself because
Mm.
I have social anxiety. I do suffer with a bit of social anxiety.
Mm.
And I went to networking. And the first time I actually went inside, I actually went in, I met a lovely lady called Ruth Harrison Swift, and we got talking at the networking. Now, networking events, if you obviously you know, a lot of
Yes,
the time you go there, you don't know anybody.
that's
You,
correct.
you don't know anyone. It's just like businesses and organizations, and and sometimes people already know each other, especially if they've been coming a while. So, and then there's me. I show up, right? And a lot of the time, in those kind of networking events, there's not many black people
Hmm.
that come. Might get the odd one or two, and
Yes.
and if I'm not mistaken, I think on that particular day I might have been maybe one of three people in a room of maybe 50 people,
Wow.
right? And got talking. You're in the coffee line, you're waiting to get your coffee and stuff, and you're there to engage with people and having to go up to groups, little huddles, and say, "Hi, I'm Veronica. Can I join you?" See, I
Mm.
have to practice that.
Yes.
Okay. And on this particular day, I'd gone to the networking, which I almost talked myself out of going to, met Ruth. And then I think the following month I went again. And then I met another lady called Haley
Mm.
Down, who's a hormonal nutritionist. And
Mm.
I shared my book. And Ruth and Haley decided they wanted to be involved.
Wow.
So that was it. So that was last year. So that was the very first conference that took place in Milton Keynes. And then we considered the people who couldn't come to the in person. So the September of last
Mm.
year, we had an online
Mm.
fab, what we need to know, 2023. And then this year, we've kind of repeated the same kind of format. So we've had the in person
Hmm.
during March, Women's International Women's Month, and then last month we had the online.
Okay, can I just? I just want to, because there's questions in the chat room. I
Okay,
didn't
cool.
notice. I've been so enthralled in what you're talking about, and I'm so sorry to those who are posing questions. I've got Natalie Clark who's joined us. She lives in Antigua, in actual fact, and she's asked a couple of questions. The first she's asked is, "Are you talking about free healthcare or paid doctor's care when you went through this
Oh,
um,
right. I I
experience?"
I went through something called the National Health Service, and the
Yeah.
National Health Service
Mm.
is funded by everybody who works
Who
and has to
works? Yes.
pay contributions called national
Health.
insurance
Yeah.
contributions.
Yes.
So
Natalie
so
used to live in the UK, so she knows the
oh,
NHS.
all right. No, I didn't go private.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I didn't go private. A lot of women, sadly, a lot of women, well, I shouldn't say sadly, but when you look at the numbers of hysterectomies being done by the NHS, what we find is as the NHS has come under more pressure, the
Mm.
numbers have slightly gone down for some of the hysterectomy or the gynecology surgery because more
Mm.
and more women are going private.
Hmm. She asks, what about diet? Can diet have any impact on our hormones? I believe, but quite frankly, that one of the things before we actually go into that, I'm a firm believer that we should not be drinking cow's milk, because cow's milk has got cow's hormones in it, and which is used to grow baby cows. Why do
Mm,
we as human beings then drink that?
yeah. Well, that's interesting because
Mm.
um, all of us, well, I can't say for everyone, but the
Hmm.
majority of us here in the UK were brought up on cow's milk.
Mm.
On your cornflakes. You had your cornflakes, you had your porridge. It,
Hmm.
it was cow's milk. We didn't have no rice milk and oat milk
Mm.
and back then almond milk. It was cow's milk. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
warm that thing up, and you poured it
Hmm.
on the cornflakes. So, and we had warm cornflakes. We didn't have, well, I didn't have cold cornflakes, right?
Mm.
And
Mm. Mm.
Weetabix. So yes, I believe there is an element of dietary impact on our gynae health with what we consume in terms of our food and what we take in.
Yeah, my daughter found out. We found out she was she had an aversion or a
Intolerance.
reaction to
Mm,
intolerance to dairy products when she was
mm,
14 years old. Prior
right.
to that, she was always asthmatic and this and eczema and that and la la la. What we
Mm,
have also found out, however, because she also has very heavy periods and very painful periods, is that if
mm,
she doesn't touch dairy at all or
mm-hmm,
meat,
mm-hmm.
her periods are quite good.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
You know.
There's lots of findings now around,
Yes, yes.
and the experts are saying periods should not be
Mhm.
painful.
They shouldn't at all.
Experts are saying periods should not be painful, and we should not be bleeding out excessively either.
Yes, it's amazing that So to answer Natalie's question, yes, there is some element of diet, but of course there needs to be education about that, which we're not getting.
Because this might sound controversial, but
Mm.
follow the money.
Yes, I agree, 100%. Follow the
Follow,
money.
follow the money.
Hmm. Hmm. And now that you're all settled, you're back to your normal self. Um, and so now you're on this mission to educate people, educate women, particularly, and men. The question I
Um,
was going to ask you was that how did all of this impact your marriage?
oh, well, that's the thing. Someone has to love you unconditionally
Mm,
to tolerate some of that stuff.
mm,
Not every man is going to be able to handle it. When I'm saying to my husband, we're on the motorway, and I'm saying to him, you have to pull over,
mm,
and it's happening more than once. Motorway. Sometimes I remember one time it was pouring with rain, hard shoulder on the motorway.
and he had to
Yeah,
pull over for what? So you
me,
could get.
to, we,
Mm,
for
mm,
me to pass urine.
mm. Because
Yeah,
obviously you couldn't hold it because those
no,
fibroids were pressing down on the bladder.
that's right.
Yes,
Your bladder,
yes.
your bladder can hardly be
I
full because
remember those. Yeah.
everything, the pressure
Mm,
is there. And
mm,
once you get the urge to go, you can't hold it.
that's right.
Yeah, the signals are there that the bladder
Mm,
is full.
hmm.
No, no amount of clenching, let's put it that way, is gonna hold back. Is gonna hold that back.
Oh.
Sometimes, yes, you have accidents,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And you wear pads not only for the bleeding but for incontinence too.
mhm, mhm,
It was a nightmare, and even during your periods, you're putting towels on bed and making sure that your area is kind of. It's not
because
very sexy. It's not very sexy, is it?
yeah, and this is why I asked, what was the impact on your
It's not.
marriage?
It's not sexy at all. And then your stomach is hot and your stomach is distended, even though you haven't started yet. But
Mm,
it's that your body's getting ready for it, and it's just like, oh, right, or I'm in pain, or I'm not in the mood, and a lot of the time you're not in the mood.
mm,
And
mm.
it does affect your libido. It does affect your love life.
And but you were able to get through it, no doubt,
Yeah, gradually, with time.
gradually.
Yeah,
With
with
time, it must
time.
have been difficult. I know it was difficult for you, but it must have been difficult for him as well. And I
Yeah,
think this is where we need to
having to
educate
step
our
up.
men.
Yeah, and
Yes.
having to step up because I'm in
Mm,
agony. And before I started to wear the machine, the TENS
mm,
machine, I would, I'd be doubled up in bed. He knew that
mm,
he'd have to bring me the hot drink, the hot water bottle, the
mm,
whatever, the
mm.
tablets, bring, and he was on his own. Basically, he's on his own.
Oh.
I'm now indisposed, and this is when we had the kids. Remember, the children are there
I
as
was
well.
now going to, because I know you said you have four boys,
Yeah.
and how did it impact them?
Well,
Or
as
did
far
they
as
not know?
they just knew mummy wasn't feeling well. Obviously,
Mm,
they probably obviously they probably have listened to some of the interviews now, and I know some
mm,
of them have the book. But and I think two of my boys have decided not to read it, but that's fine. I'm their mom. But yes, they would just carry on playing. Children, mum's in bed. Then they would come into the room and talk to mummy and whatever, mum, and but mum's indisposed. Mum's not playing. Mum is not up and laughing and joking, and mum's under the covers.
And I suppose depending on the age of your boys, it's something that